and welcome to this next lesson. We've talked a little bit about renunciation and I wanted to introduce that, but now we really want to get into the meat and bones of Module 3, which is Mindfulness of Thought. So in Modules 1 and 2, we talked about mindfulness of body and mindfulness of feeling, but now we really want to look what is underlying feeling, and at the root really are our ongoing thoughts. So in order to go from feelings of feeling stressed, depressed, anxious to feelings of happiness and calmness, which is after all what we're trying to achieve with meditation, we've got to go below that and find the cause and deal with the cause of those feelings, which at some level is thought. Now some people might say that it seems like feelings can come up on their own sometimes, but I would say that beneath any feeling that you have, any emotional feeling at all, there is some level of thought, even if that thought is going on at a very unconscious level. So to you it seems like these feelings of depression or whatever come up automatically. No, I say that there are thoughts going on underneath and we need to sort of tap into that. So we're going to dive into this level of thought and start meditating on our thoughts. But first of all, you could say there are really two types of suffering, and you are listening to this because in some regard you are suffering in some way or another. Otherwise, why would you do meditation? So meditation is about trying to get to a happier state. Now, those two different types of suffering are physical suffering and mental suffering. And in this world, you know, there's a lot of physical suffering, I'll agree, pain, itchiness, nausea, or whatever. But by far and away, there's much more mental suffering, loneliness, depression, anxiety. I mean, modern medicine is quite good at looking after the body and giving us the various drugs that we need to help overcome pain. And in modules 1 and 2, we talked about the body and we talked about some modules to deal with pain. And in fact, some people would say that pain in the body is nothing other than at the mind, the level of the mind. And a great example of this, which I came across as I was reading, was that in World War I, they used a chemical called nitrous oxide as an anesthetic. Now, I found out that nitrous oxide has absolutely no analgesic or pain-killing qualities whatsoever. What nitrous oxide does is it gets rid of aversion. So you can still feel the pain, you just don't care. Like you don't care whether your leg's being chopped off or whatever. And so by not caring about the pain, you can deal with it quite easily. So you can sit there and watch the surgeon sew up a wound in your leg, you know, in the case of sort of in the World War. So that goes to show that without the aversion, the pain isn't a problem. Now, of course, pain represents harm to the body and we don't want to have that. So I'm not saying that we ignore all pain, but it just goes to show that pain to a large extent, or at least the suffering of pain, is caused from the mind. But irrespective of that, whether you believe pain is in the mind or not, the most of our suffering is this mental suffering and stress and anxiety, and that's what we're going to look at in this module. So let's dive down into meditation on thought. Now, in dealing with those thoughts, there are different ways we can deal with them. Now, the common ways that we normally do is we either express negative thoughts by yelling at someone or punching them or whatever, or we try to repress the thoughts and sort of push them down and ignore them. Now, it goes without saying that neither of those strategies are very good at all. So instead, what meditation teaches us is we need to do one of two other things, and that is, first of all, try to transform a negative thought into a positive one. And the second is to actually just dissolve it outright. Now, in working with thought, there's one great benefit over and above working with the body and working with emotions, and that if we understand that at the base level our problems are from thought, then we can change thought just like that. We can think another thought in a split second. Whereas problems with the body take a long time to change, and problems with feelings can not take as long as physical ailments, but they also can manifest for quite a while, so we need to work on them. But when we think about working at the level of thought, we can change our negative thoughts just like that, and hopefully that will of course then lead on to better emotional health and better physical health. So how do we transform thoughts? Well, it's about looking at things from the different relative ways of looking at things. So a great example that I had a work colleague some years ago who told me that he went through a period of about 10 years of deep depression. Now, in that depression, he couldn't lift himself out of that horrible mood, and he spent days in bed and so and so. But in the end, through assistance from a new partner that he actually had, and through finally getting some healthy food into him and doing some exercise and doing meditation and doing some work on himself, he was able to get rid of the depression. And he went on to live a life which he felt was really blessed, because he felt happy, not only happier than depression, but he said he felt happier and healthier than he'd ever done in his whole life. And this is the revelation. He said, looking back, if it wasn't for the fact that he'd gone through that period of depression, he wouldn't have evolved into his life where he loves every day. So looking back, he transformed. He looked at his period of depression from a relative point of view, that it actually helped him on his journey. That's a big picture way of seeing how transformation and the way we look at things can change the way we feel about them. Now, we can do this on a situation by situation basis. So if something annoys us, we need to practice looking at it from different angles. So in the meditation below, I've got a deliberate practice for you to try to transform your thoughts by looking at it from different angles. So let's say someone shouts at you and it makes you angry. Now challenge yourself to see if you can look at it from all different types of anger to change your thought patterns and the feelings associated with those thought patterns, as much as you can. So, for example, you might want to look at the funny side of the situation. He's shouting at you for no reason at all, and his cheeks are glowing, and he looks a bit like a clown, and the whole thing's a bit funny. So you might want to see the funny side of it. You might want to see it from a compassionate side of it. Maybe this guy has had a terrible upbringing and have been brought up by brutal people who are always angry, and so he's learnt to take on these angry attributes and deal with every problem from an angry point of view. That can't be good for his own internal psyche, and you've got to feel compassionate for people like that. Maybe you can look at it from the point of view of a teacher. We need angry people in the world to teach us patience. We need to learn to have greater and greater tolerance. And it's only in situations where we're tested that we get a chance to play that tolerance. What's some really crazy angles to look at it? Maybe you could look at it philosophically, like life is full of ups and downs, and this is a small down and it's got to be followed by an up. Or maybe you can even try to look at him as a sexy person. Maybe he looks, or she, or whatever, looks really sexy when they're being angry. They get full of energy. Anyway, you can try to be creative and try to choose an angle to look at it to see if you can transform the way you think about a situation and thus feel differently about the situation. So that is using transformation to look at thoughts differently. And we're going to be doing this further in different ways as we do more and more teaching. So that is one way, is transformation of thought. Now, here comes a bit of insight into that. If you are able to transform the way you look at a situation and judge it differently depending on how you look at it. What would you say the intrinsic value of that person shouting at you is? Is it really necessarily bad, or is it only bad because we judge it as bad? If we can see the funny side of it and the compassionate side of it and the learning side of it and the philosophical side of it, then it shows you that any situation must have two parts. There's the action itself, but whether it's good or bad depends on how you judge it. So there's a part coming from your mind. So that situation has no inherent qualities in and of itself. It could make you sad or happy or frustrated or whatever, depending on how you label it. And it's this quality which leads us to the next way of dealing with negative thoughts and to the negative emotions by extension. And that is to actually dissolve the event. Because if you can understand at a deep level that situations themselves have no inherent qualities, but you place judgments on top of those situations, and you see that it's all coming from your mind, it's actually easy to watch the situation and be mindful of the situation with that understanding. And sometimes the whole, network of emotions just collapses around that event and you are left feeling peaceful. Now, this mindfulness, basis of mindfulness, is actually one of the bases of all new movements in psychology, like acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and a whole lot of new psychology uses this idea that just being mindful of an event will allow those emotions to dissipate in and of themselves. So we have other meditations, one which is, for example, trying to be aware of every distraction for a period of 3 breaths. And in that meditation, and I explain it below, what you do is you as you're aware of even a negative situation, like someone running a red light in front of you or something like that, as you try to concentrate on that for 3 breaths, the negative emotion dissipates and you're left with the thought as a very, like the sky is blue, a non-emotional thought. It like just happened. And then it's easy to come back to the meditation object. So again, try that naming a thought meditation to understand how you can dissolve thoughts just in and of themselves by being mindful of those thoughts. And I want to conclude this lesson with just a little personal story, which I hope might be encouraging. When I went on my long retreat, of course, lots of amazing stuff happened in retreat. And after retreat, I was interviewed by someone, by a newspaper, to find out a little bit about, what it was like going in retreat. And one of the questions was interesting. They said, what is the biggest thing that happened to you in retreat? What is the biggest change, etc.? And I could have pointed to a number of things, but when I thought about it deeply, I realized that the biggest change was that coming out of a long retreat and doing a lot of meditation was that I just did not judge people anymore. I had very little emotional judgment. When someone did something wrong, of course I judge it as wrong on the surface level, but I understand there's a whole lot of causes and conditions behind why they do wrong things. So I felt like I don't judge it in the way that I used to before I did lots of meditation, in which it would make me angry and mad. I would simply just see it, know how to react to it, and judge it from a logical level, but not take it to heart and make judgments by that person is really bad and I'm going to hate him for the rest of my life type of judgment that you would have. Now, with that reduction in having to judge people all the time, it is amazing the weight which fell off my mind and the ability to stay calm. It's the biggest shift, I would say, in my underlying sort of emotional baggage, just to have to be released from that habit, I guess it's a habit, of always judging this people as good and this people as bad and whatever. It's like, okay, they did this as a consequence, we should do this in return, and so be it, without getting so negative about it. So I hope that as a result of doing these meditations, you'll start to see that judgments of people are relative, to say the least, and that you can release that and therefore feel much calmer in your day-to-day activities. Okay, try the meditations and good luck. I hope you enjoy them.